They told me loving him would get me killed. They were right, but not in the way anyone expected. My name is Zara Okonkwo, and 3 months ago, I stood in a courthouse wearing a borrowed white dress, marrying a man I'd met exactly once. His name was Nikolai Volkov, and he was the most dangerous person I'd ever seen. Cold eyes like winter in Moscow, hands that had ended lives, a smile that never reached past his lips. And I did it to save the man I actually loved, Dante Moreau. The name still makes my heart skip. Beautiful, brilliant, doomed Dante, heir to the Moreau crime family, targeted for execution by his own father's organization. The hit was sanctioned, the deadline was set, and the only way to stop it was to become someone else's wife. Someone who terrified even the people who wanted Dante dead. You want to know how a nursing student from Lagos ends up married to a Russian Mafia boss to save the rival Mog prince she loves? You want to know what happens when the man you marry to save another man's life decides he wants to keep you? Let me tell you about the 63 days that destroyed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and survival. But first, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because what happens next? You won't believe it even when I tell you. And I lived it. I met Dante Moreau on a Tuesday that smelled like antiseptic and coffee. I was finishing a double shift at Mercy General, my feet screaming in my sneakers, when he walked into the ER with a knife wound in his side and the kind of face that makes you forget your own name. He refused to explain how he got hurt. He paid cash. And when our eyes met while I was cleaning the wound, something in the universe shifted. "You have gentle hands," he said, his accent smooth and French-tinged. "In my world, gentle is rare." I should have run, should have called security, should have done anything except smile back at him, but I was 24 and tired of being careful. Tired of following rules that never got me anywhere except more debt and more shifts. So when he asked for my number, I gave it to him. That was 4 months ago. 4 months of secret dates in restaurants where nobody looked too closely at who you were with. 4 months of learning that Dante was trying to leave his family's business, that he wanted out of a life that was slowly killing his soul. 4 months of falling so hard I forgot to protect myself. "I'm going to be legitimate," he told me one night, his head in my lap in my tiny apartment. "I'm buying out. I have enough money saved. 6 more months, Zara. 6 more months and I'm free. We're free." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. I was walking home from class. I was finishing my nursing degree at night, when a black SUV pulled up beside me. The window rolled down and a woman looked out. She was older, maybe 50, with the kind of elegance that money can't buy, but power can. "Zara Okonkwo," she said. Not a question, a statement. My stomach dropped. "Who are you?" "Someone who's trying to save my nephew's life." "Get in the car." I should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except open that door. But she'd said nephew, and I only knew one person who might have an aunt with this kind of presence. Inside the car, she didn't waste time. "My name is Margot Moreau, Dante's aunt. And in 72 hours, unless something changes, my brother is going to have Dante killed." The world tilted. What? Why? Because Dante is trying to leave the family. Because my brother sees it as betrayal. Because in our world, you don't retire. You die or you get pushed out. And either way, it's violent. She studied me with sharp eyes. He talks about you. He thinks I don't know, but I do. He's planning to take you away from all this. Noble. Stupid. Fatal. There has to be something we can do. Police. Police? She laughed, but it was bitter. Child, half the police department is on the family payroll. There's only one way to save Dante's life, and it requires you to do something extraordinary. That's when she told me about Nikolai Volkov. The Volkov family and the Moreau family had been rivals for 2 decades. Blood feuds, territory wars, the kind of hatred that gets passed down through generations. 6 months ago, the 2 families had reached a tentative truce, brokered by neutral parties who were tired of the violence spilling into their operations. Part of that truce was a treaty. Certain members of both families were now untouchable. Kill someone on the protected list, and the war reignites. Except this time, the other crime families would turn on whoever broke the treaty. Nikolai Volkov is on that list, Margot said. And Nikolai Volkov wants a wife. I stared at her. I don't understand. Nikolai's father is pressuring him to marry, to produce heirs. Nikolai doesn't want a Russian bride who comes with family entanglements. He wants someone clean, someone with no ties to our world, someone he can control. She paused. If you marry Nikolai, you become part of his family, protected. And more importantly, anyone you were connected to before the marriage also falls under the treaty protection, including former romantic connections. My mouth went dry. You want me to marry a stranger to save Dante? I want you to marry a stranger so my nephew doesn't get a bullet in his head next week. Yes. Dante would never agree to this, which is why we're not telling him. She pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Inside were documents. Immigration papers showing I'd been brought to America as a child. False. I came at 16 on a student visa. Employment records at businesses I'd never heard of. A manufactured history that made me look like exactly what Nikolai wanted. You have 24 hours to decide, Margot said. But know this. If you say no, I can't protect Dante. His father's decree is absolute. And if you say yes, there's no going back. Nikolai Volkov doesn't divorce. He doesn't do trial runs. You marry him, you belong to him. You'd be doing this knowing you might never see Dante again. She dropped me off 2 blocks from my apartment. I sat on my couch for 6 hours, staring at that folder. I thought about calling Dante, but what would I say? What could he do that wouldn't make things worse? If he knew his father had ordered his death, he'd do something reckless, something that would get him killed faster. At 3 a.m., I made my decision. I texted Margot. Yes. The next morning, I met Nikolai Volkov for the first time. The meeting was in a restaurant that didn't officially exist, one of those places where the door is unmarked and you need to know someone who knows someone. Margot walked me in, then left me at a table in the back. I waited. And then he arrived. Nikolai Volkov was not what I expected. I'd built him up in my mind as some monster, some scarred villain from a movie. But the man who sat down across from me was young, maybe 30, and unnervingly handsome. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, dark hair cut close. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. And those eyes, cold and calculating, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and felt too little. He didn't smile, didn't offer his hand. Zara Okonkwo, he said, his Russian accent crisp. "You're prettier than your photographs." "You've seen photographs of me?" "I've seen your entire life. Medical records, school transcripts, the apartment you rent, the coffee shop where you study, the hospital where you work." He tilted his head. "I know you pay for your mother's care in a facility in Lagos. I know you send money to your younger brother every month. I know you have $43,000 in student debt. I know everything." Fear crawled up my spine. "And you still want to marry me?" "I want someone intelligent enough to know when to speak and when to stay silent. Someone with something to lose, so I know you won't betray me. Someone beautiful enough to stand beside me at functions without embarrassing me." He leaned forward. "You meet all those requirements. The question is, do you understand what you're agreeing to?" I met his eyes. "I understand." "Do you?" Something flickered in his expression. "You will be my wife. That means you live where I live. You go where I go. You smile when I need you to smile, and you disappear when I need you to disappear. You will not contact your former life. You will not attempt to leave. You will give me children when I decide it's time. And in exchange, I will protect you, provide for you, and ensure your family wants for nothing. Those are the terms. Non-negotiable." My hands shook in my lap, but I thought of Dante, thought of him with a target on his back, thought of him dying because I was too afraid to save him. "I accept," I whispered. Nikolai studied me for a long moment. Then he stood. "We marry in 3 days. Margot will provide everything you need. And Zara?" He paused at the edge of the table. "Don't fall in love with me. This is a transaction. Keep it that way." He left. I sat there for 20 minutes, trying to remember how to breathe. The next 3 days were a blur. Margot moved me into a hotel. A stylist appeared with dresses I couldn't pronounce the designers of. Someone else did my hair, my makeup, coached me on how to walk, how to stand, how to be the wife of a man like Nikolai Volkov. I wasn't allowed to contact anyone, wasn't allowed to say goodbye. On the 3rd day, I stood in a courthouse in a white dress that cost more than my car, and I married a stranger. Nikolai slid a ring onto my finger, platinum, heavy with diamonds. The judge pronounced us married. And when Nikolai kissed me, it was cold and performative, meant for the witnesses, not for me. But as we walked out of that courthouse, his hand on the small of my back, I caught a glimpse of my phone, which Margot had returned to me with a single text already waiting. It was from Dante. "Where are you? I'm worried." I deleted the message. And I became Zara Volkov. Nikolai's home was a fortress disguised as a mansion. 20,000 square feet of marble and cold elegance in the hills outside the city, surrounded by gates, guards, and security cameras that tracked every inch of the property. Beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. "This is your wing," Nikolai said, leading me through hallways that echoed with our footsteps. He pushed open double doors to reveal a bedroom suite larger than my entire former apartment. All cream and gold, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. "You have your own bathroom, closet, sitting room, everything you need." "Where's your room?" I asked. "On the opposite side of the house." He said it matter-of-factly. "I value my privacy. You'll have yours as well, unless I decide otherwise." Unless. That word hung between us like a threat. "The staff will bring your meals. You're not to leave the property without my permission and without security." You're not to communicate with anyone from your former life. You're not to— I understand the rules, I interrupted, exhausted and hollow. You've made them very clear. He studied me with those ice-cold eyes. You're angry. I'm tired. You made a choice, Zara. Remember that when you start feeling like a victim. He turned to leave, then paused. We have a function tomorrow night. A charity gala. You'll attend with me. Margot will prepare you. Wear the red dress in your closet. Be ready at 7. He left me alone in that beautiful cage. I spent that first night standing at the window, staring out at the gardens, wondering what Dante was doing. If he was safe. If he was looking for me. If he hated me for disappearing without a word. My phone sat on the nightstand. Nikolai had returned it, but I knew it was monitored. Every text, every call, every search would be watched. So I didn't touch it. Instead, I cried until I had nothing left. The next morning, Margot arrived with a team. The gala is important, she explained while someone did my hair. Nikolai needs to present you as a legitimate wife, not an acquisition. These people have known him his entire life. They'll be watching for weakness, for cracks, for anything they can exploit. What am I supposed to do? Smile. Stand close to him. Let him touch you. Hand on your back, arm around your waist. Don't flinch. Answer questions politely but vaguely. You're a nurse he met through charity work. You fell in love. It was a whirlwind romance. Keep it simple. And if someone asks why I married him so quickly? Margot's expression softened. Say he swept you off your feet. In my experience, people believe what they want to believe, especially when the alternative is too dark to consider. At 7 o'clock, I stood in the foyer wearing a red dress that clung to every curve, diamonds at my throat that cost more than my mother's yearly care. Nikolai appeared at the top of the stairs. He wore a black tuxedo, hair perfectly styled, looking like something out of a dangerous fairy tale. He descended slowly, his eyes locked on me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or appreciation. You'll do, he said when he reached me. Not a compliment, an assessment. He offered his arm. I took it. And we walked into hell together. The gala was in the ballroom of a hotel so exclusive I'd never even heard of it. Chandeliers dripped crystal. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns that cost college tuitions circulated with champagne. Everyone was beautiful, polished, and absolutely terrifying. Remember, Nikolai murmured as we entered. You love me. You're thrilled to be here. You've never been happier. I pasted on a smile that felt like shattered glass. The night became a parade of introductions, names I couldn't keep straight, faces that smiled while their eyes calculated. Everyone wanted to meet Nikolai's mysterious new wife. Everyone wanted to know where I came from, who my family was, why a man like Nikolai Volkov would marry someone like me. I repeated the script Margot had given me until it felt almost true. And then, halfway through the night, I saw him. Dante. He was across the ballroom, wearing a tuxedo, talking to an older man I didn't recognize. He looked exactly as I remembered, beautiful and haunted, with those eyes that had always seen too much. And then he turned and saw me. The recognition was instantaneous. His face went pale, then red. Confusion, hurt, betrayal. It all flashed across his expression in seconds. He started toward me. I felt Nikolai's hand tighten on my waist. Don't, he said quietly. Don't react. Don't acknowledge him. I have to. You acknowledge him, and people will ask questions. Questions lead to investigations. Investigations lead to the truth, and the truth gets him killed. Nikolai's voice was steel. This is why you married me, remember? To save his life. So save it. Turn away. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I turned my back on the man I loved and let my husband lead me away. But I felt Dante's eyes on me for the rest of the night, felt his confusion and hurt like knives in my chest. In the car on the way home, I broke. How long? I whispered. How long do I have to pretend he doesn't exist? Nikolai stared out the window. Forever. That was the agreement. He deserves an explanation. He deserves to know why I left. He deserves to live, which he will, as long as you play your part. Nikolai finally looked at me. I'm not the villain here, Zara. You made a choice. You saved his life. But that choice has a cost, and you don't get to decide when it's paid in full.
I do.
I wanted to hate him, wanted to scream and rage and fight. But he was right. This was the choice I'd made, and now I had to live with it. Over the following weeks, I learned to navigate my new reality. I attended functions on Nikolai's arm, smiling until my face hurt. I learned which fork to use at formal dinners, which families were allies and which were threats. I learned to recognize the guards by name, to navigate the mansion without getting lost, to fill the endless empty hours with books and walks through the garden. Nikolai was rarely home. When he was polite but distant. We shared meals sometimes, in silence. He never touched me beyond what was necessary for appearances, never asked how I was doing, never treated me like anything more than a particularly expensive acquisition. But sometimes, I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear him in his wing of the house, pacing, talking on the phone in rapid Russian, sounding like someone who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. 6 weeks into the marriage, everything changed again. I was in the library, my favorite room in the house, full of books in a dozen languages, when Nikolai appeared in the doorway. We need to talk, he said. I set down my book. About what? About the fact that Dante Moreau has been trying to find you for the past month and a half. About the fact that he's asking questions that are going to get him killed if he keeps asking them. And about the fact that you're going to have to see him one more time to make this stop. My heart stopped. What? Nikolai crossed to the window, his back to me. Dante is convinced you were kidnapped. He's been to the police. He's been to his aunt. He's been to anyone who might know where you are. And now he's starting to make connections that lead back to my family. If he connects you to me, if he figures out what really happened, the treaty becomes void.
And then he dies anyway. So what do you want me to do?
He turned to face me. You're going to meet with him. You're going to tell him you left him because you didn't love him. You're going to break his heart so thoroughly that he stops looking for you. And then you're never going to see him again. Tears burned my eyes. I can't do that. You can. And you will. Because that's what saving him actually means, Zara. Not the romantic version where you're noble and he's grateful. The real version, where you destroy him to protect him. His expression was unreadable. I've arranged a meeting. Tomorrow, at a neutral location. You'll have 10 minutes. Make them count. He left me there, shaking and crying, knowing he was right. The next day, a car drove me to a coffee shop on the edge of the city. Dante was already there, seated in the back corner. looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. When I walked in, he stood so fast his chair nearly toppled. Zara. My name was a prayer, a curse, a question. I sat down across from him. Hi, Dante. Where have you been? I've been losing my mind. I thought you were dead. I thought someone took you. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. That stopped him. Zara, what's going on? This was it. The moment I'd been dreading. The moment I had to destroy everything we'd been. I left, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I left because I couldn't do this anymore. Do what? This. Us. Pretending that we could have a normal life when you're neck deep in a world that will never let you go. I'm tired, Dante. Tired of hiding. Tired of waiting. Tired of being with someone who's always one bad decision away from getting himself killed. He stared at me like I'd stabbed him. You said you loved me. I thought I did. The lies tasted like poison. But love isn't enough when you're in love with someone who doesn't have a future. I was getting out. You know I was getting out. Were you? I met his eyes.
Or were you just telling me what I wanted to hear? Because from where I'm sitting, you were never going to leave. You were always going to find one more job, one more reason to stay, and I couldn't watch you die. So you just disappeared? Yes. Without a word. Without an explanation. I'm giving you one now. I stood. Move on, Dante. Find someone who can live with who you are. Because I can't. I walked toward the door. Wait. His voice broke. Just tell me you're safe. Tell me you're okay. I looked back at him one last time, memorized his face, his beautiful, broken face. I'm fine, I lied. I'm exactly where I want to be. And I left him there. In the car, I sobbed so hard I thought I might shatter. But when we pulled up to the mansion, I dried my tears and walked inside with my head high. Nikolai was waiting in the foyer. It's done? He asked. It's done. He studied me for a long moment, and for the first time, I thought I saw something like sympathy in his eyes. You did well, he said quietly. Then he walked away, leaving me alone with my grief. 2 months into my marriage, I stopped crying. Not because the pain faded, it never did, but because I realized tears changed nothing. Dante was safe. That was the point. That was the only thing that mattered. So I built a life in my gilded cage. I threw myself into the medical journals Nikolai's staff provided when I asked. I studied, preparing for the day I might return to nursing, though I knew that day might never come. I walked the gardens until I knew every flower, every path. I learned Russian from a tutor who came 3 times a week, figuring if I was going to be trapped in this world, I might as well understand what people were saying about me. And I watched Nikolai. He was a fascinating contradiction. Cold in public, but I'd seen him be gentle with the elderly housekeeper who'd raised him. Ruthless in business, but he'd quietly paid for the surgery of one of the guard's daughters. He never smiled, but sometimes I'd catch him in the library late at night, reading poetry in Russian, his expression almost peaceful. We still barely spoke, still maintained our separate lives, but occasionally we'd end up in the same room, the library usually, and a strange sort of companionship would settle between us. Nothing warm, nothing intimate, just 2 people existing in the same space. Not quite friends, not quite strangers,
One night, 3 months in, everything shifted. I was in the library when Nikolai appeared, looking different. Tired, maybe, or troubled. He poured himself vodka from the bar cart, drank it in one swallow, then poured another. "Bad day?" I asked without thinking. He glanced at me, surprised I'd spoken. "You could say that." "Want to talk about it?" "Why would you care?" Good question. Why did I care? This man had bought me like property, controlled every aspect of my life, stood between me and the person I actually loved. But he'd also saved Dante's life. And he'd never been cruel to me. Controlling, yes. Cold, absolutely. But not cruel. "Because we're married," I said. "And because you look like you could use someone to talk to." He studied me for a long moment, then surprised me by sitting down in the chair across from mine. "One of my father's old rivals is trying to renegotiate territory agreements," he said. "He thinks because my father is dead, I'm weak, inexperienced, easy to manipulate." "Are you?" A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "No, but convincing him of that will require violence. And I'm tired of violence." I set down my book. "Then why do you stay in this world?" "Because it's the only world I know. My father raised me for this. I was 12 the first time I watched him kill someone. 14 the first time he made me pull the trigger." He said it without emotion, like he was reciting facts about the weather. "This is what I am. There's no getting out." Dante wanted out. The name hung between us like a blade. Nikolai's expression hardened. "Dante Moreau is a romantic fool who thought he could walk away from a legacy built on blood. He would have died within a month if you hadn't intervened. And instead he gets to live, thinking I betrayed him." "Better that than dead." Nikolai leaned forward. "You want me to feel guilty about this arrangement? I don't. You made a choice to save him. I made it possible. And in exchange, you live in comfort, safety, wanting for nothing. There are worse fates." "Except I can't be with the person I love." "No," he agreed. "You can't. But he's alive. You saved him. Most people don't get to be heroes, Zara. You did. The cost is just higher than you expected." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't. He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I respect what you did. The sacrifice you made. Not many people would have that strength." It was the first kind thing he'd ever said to me. After that night, something changed between us. We started having dinner together more often. Started talking. About books, about politics, about everything except the obvious things we couldn't discuss. He told me about growing up in Russia before his family moved to America. I told him about Legos, about my mother, about the brother I was putting through school with the money Nikolai provided. We weren't friends. We weren't lovers. But we were something. And then came the night that changed everything. It was late, past midnight. I'd been reading in bed when I heard shouting from somewhere in the house. Gunshots. My door burst open. One of the guards, Alexei, who always had coffee ready when I came down for breakfast, grabbed my arm. "We have to go. Now. The house is under attack." Terror froze me. "What? Who? No time. Move." He dragged me through the hallways, down a staircase I'd never seen, into tunnels beneath the mansion I didn't know existed. Behind us, I heard more gunshots, shouting in Russian. The sounds of chaos.
"Where's Nikolai?"
I gasped.
Fighting. He'll follow. We're getting you out first. We emerged into a garage I'd never seen, full of armored vehicles. Alexei shoved me into one, climbed in beside me, and we were moving before I could even process what was happening. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Dmitry Sokolov, the rival Nikolai told you about. He didn't wait for negotiations. He came for the house. Came for Nikolai." Alexei's jaw was tight. "If they capture you, they'll use you as leverage. We can't let that happen." We drove through the night to a safe house 2 hours away, a nondescript building in an industrial area. Other guards were already there, setting up security, coordinating on phones. I sat in a windowless room, shaking, wondering if Nikolai was alive or dead. He arrived 3 hours later, blood on his shirt, but alive. The moment he walked into the room and saw me, something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe. He crossed to me in 3 strides, cupped my face in his hands, the first time he'd ever touched me like this, and searched my eyes. "You're not hurt?" "I'm fine. Are you?" "Nothing serious." He dropped his hands but didn't step away. Sokolov made his move. We pushed them back, but they'll try again. They know about you now, which means you're in danger. "What does that mean?" "It means you can't go back to the mansion. Can't be anywhere they expect you to be." His jaw tightened. "It means I failed to keep you safe." "You didn't fail. I'm alive." "Because Alexei got you out in time. If they'd been 30 seconds faster." He cut himself off, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were cold once more. Controlled. "I'm moving you to a secure location outside the city. Somewhere even my closest people don't know about. You'll be there until this is resolved." "How long will that take?" "However long it takes to end Sokolov." He said it with absolute certainty. He came for my home. Threatened my people. Threatened you. That doesn't get forgiven. The way he said, "threatened you," made something twist in my chest. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a penthouse apartment in a building Nikolai owned under a shell company. No guards inside, too obvious, but security watching the building. Groceries delivered. Everything I needed provided. But I was alone. Nikolai visited once, briefly, to check on me. He looked exhausted, worn down by whatever war he was fighting. "Is it almost over?" I asked. "Soon." He hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry this is your life now. This isn't what you signed up for." "I signed up to save Dante. This is just part of the cost." He studied me. "You still love him?" It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted. "I'll always love him. But I made my choice. I'm not going back on it." Something complicated crossed Nikolai's face. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for." Then he left. The war ended 3 days later. I learned about it from the news. A massive shootout in an industrial district. Multiple casualties. Dmitry Sokolov found dead in what police were calling a gang-related incident. Nikolai came to get me himself. "It's done," he said when I opened the door. "You can come home." Home. The word felt strange. But I packed my things and followed him. In the car, I asked, "Did you kill him? Sokolov?" "Yes." "How do you live with that?" He glanced at me. "I live with it because the alternative is being dead. In my world, mercy is weakness. Hesitation is fatal. You do what needs to be done, and you don't look back." "Doesn't it ever bother you? The violence? The death?"
For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, every day. But I learned a long time ago that what bothers me doesn't matter. What matters is survival, protection, power. He paused. And lately, what matters is making sure you stay alive. The way he said it made my breath catch. That night, back at the mansion, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the attack, about how close I'd come to being used as leverage, about how Nikolai had touched my face with something almost like fear in his eyes, about how somewhere in the past 4 months, my husband had become more than just the man I'd married to save someone else. And that terrified me more than anything else that had happened. 5 months into my marriage, I realized I was in trouble. Not the obvious kind. The danger, the violence, the constant awareness that I lived in a world where people died over business disputes. I'd gotten used to that, strange as it sounds. You can adapt to almost anything if you have to. No, this was a different kind of trouble. I was starting to care about Nikolai Volkov. Not love. I still loved Dante, still thought about him constantly, still felt the ache of what I'd lost. But Nikolai had somehow gone from my captor to my companion to something I didn't have words for. I noticed things. The way he rubbed his temples when he had a headache but would never admit he was in pain. The way he took his coffee, black, 2 sugars, always in the same cup. The way he'd leave books for me in the library, ones he thought I'd like, never saying anything about it but watching to see if I read them. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. And maybe he noticed me too, because things were changing between us. We had dinner together every night now. Not because we had to, but because we both showed up. We talked about everything. Politics, history, the books we were reading. He told me about his mother, who'd died when he was young. I told him about my father, who'd left when I was 12. We didn't talk about Dante. That was the unspoken rule. But one night, Nikolai broke it. We were in his study. I'd started joining him there sometimes while he worked, reading while he handled business. It was companionable, comfortable. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly, looking up from his laptop. "Sure." "Do you regret it?"
Marrying me? I set down my book. That's a complicated question. I'm asking for a simple answer. Then no, I don't regret it, because Dante is alive, and that was the point. But if you could go back, knowing what you know now, if you could choose differently, I'd make the same choice. I met his eyes. Every time, without hesitation. He studied me, and I couldn't read his expression. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "I'm just someone who loved enough to sacrifice." "No," he said softly. "You're someone who loves enough to live with the consequences. That's rarer than you think." The moment hung between us, heavy with things we weren't saying. Then his phone rang, and the moment shattered. But after that night, everything felt different. Charged. Like we were both circling something neither of us wanted to name. 6 months into the marriage, Nikolai asked me to attend a family wedding with him. "It's for my cousin, Irina," he explained over breakfast. "In Moscow. 3 days. You don't have to go, but it would be expected. And it would silence the relatives who think our marriage is a sham." "Is it?" I asked. "A sham?" He looked at me for a long moment. "I'm not sure anymore." We flew to Moscow on a private jet, and I saw a different side of Nikolai. He was more relaxed there,
speaking rapid Russian with family members who hugged him and kissed his cheeks. They were curious about me, the mysterious American wife, but kind, welcoming even. His grandmother especially took to me. "You have kind eyes," she said in thickly accented English, patting my hand. "Nikolai needs kind. He's had too much hard in his life." At the wedding, I watched Nikolai dance with his cousins, laugh at jokes, look almost human. And when he asked me to dance, I didn't hesitate. "You're different here," I said as we moved to the music. "Here, I'm not the head of the family. I'm just Nikolai." He pulled me closer. "Here, I get to remember what it was like before everything became about power and survival. Do you miss it? Being just Nikolai? Every day." His hand tightened on my waist. "But that person doesn't exist anymore. He died the same day my father did, when I had to take over an empire I never wanted." "Then why do you stay?" "Because 200 families depend on the Volkov organization for their livelihood. Because if I walk away, there's a power vacuum, and power vacuums lead to blood in the streets. Because this is what duty looks like, Zara. It's not noble or beautiful. It's just necessary." I understood that, more than he knew. That night, after the reception, we were walking back to our hotel room when Nikolai's phone rang. He answered it, listened, and his entire body went rigid. "When?" he said in English, for my benefit. A pause. "How bad?" Another pause. "I'm on my way." He hung up, and the man I'd been dancing with was gone, replaced by the cold, controlled leader I'd first met. "What happened?" I asked. "There's been an incident. One of my warehouses was hit. 3 men dead, including someone I trusted." His jaw tightened. "We're going back. Now." The flight home was silent. Nikolai worked the entire time, making calls, issuing orders in Russian. I could see the weight settling back onto his shoulders, the humanity from the wedding disappearing under the armor he wore. When we landed, he turned to me. "I need to handle this. It's going to be bad. Retaliation, strategy, sending messages. I don't want you anywhere near it." "I'm not fragile, Nikolai." "I know, but I need you safe. Please." The please was what got me. He never asked. He ordered. But this was a request. "Okay," I agreed. He left me at the mansion with extra guards and disappeared into whatever darkness he inhabited when he did what he did. I didn't see him for 3 days. When he finally came home, he looked haunted. There was blood on his clothes. Not his, I hoped. And something in his eyes that made my heart hurt. He went straight to his study, poured vodka, drank it. I followed him. "Nikolai, don't." His voice was rough. "Don't try to make this better. Don't try to fix me. You can't." "I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to be here." "Why?" He turned on me, and there was anguish in his eyes. "Why do you care? I bought you. I tracked you. I ruined your life. Why the hell do you care what happens to me?" Because somehow, impossibly, I did. Because over the past 6 months, he'd become real to me. Because I'd seen glimpses of the man he might have been if the world had been kinder. Because I was falling for my husband, and I didn't know how to stop it. Because you're not the monster you think you are, I said quietly. He laughed, bitter and broken. "Yes, I am. I just killed 4 people to send a message. I tortured a man to get information. I did things tonight that would make you sick if you knew the details. That's who I am, Zara. That's what you're stuck with."
I crossed to him, took the glass from his hand, set it down. Then I did something I'd never done before. I hugged him. He went rigid, shocked. But after a moment, his arms came around me, and he held on like I was the only thing keeping him upright. We stood there for a long time, in his study, while he shook with exhaustion and grief and the weight of all the things he carried. And I realized with crystal clarity, I was in love with two men. The one I'd married to save, and the one I'd married instead. 7 months into my marriage, my carefully constructed world exploded. It started with a phone call. I was in the garden, reading, when Margot appeared. I hadn't seen her since the wedding. Nikolai kept me separate from the Moreau family, part of maintaining the fiction that our marriage had nothing to do with them. "We need to talk," she said, her face grave. We went to a secluded corner of the garden, away from the guards.
"It's Dante," she said without preamble. "He's in trouble." My heart stopped. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where he found out the truth about why you married Nikolai." No. No, no, no. "How?" "He has a friend in the Russian organization, someone who owed him a favor. They told him about the treaty, about how marrying you to Nikolai saved his life." Margot's expression was tight. "He's furious. Feels like you betrayed him by not telling him the truth. And now he's talking about confronting Nikolai, demanding that he let you go." Ice filled my veins. He can't. If he confronts Nikolai, if he makes this public, the treaty becomes void and he's back on the hit list. "I know." Margot grabbed my shoulders. "You need to stop him. I can arrange a meeting. But Zara, you need to make him understand that pursuing this will get him killed. He won't listen to me. I broke his heart. He hates me." "He doesn't hate you. He loves you. That's the problem." She pressed a card into my hand with an address. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. He'll be there. This is your chance to save him again. Don't waste it." She left me there, shaking. That night, I told Nikolai everything. I found him in his study, expected him to be angry that I was involved with Moreau family drama again. But instead, he just looked tired. "I know," he said. "I've had reports. Dante's been making noise, asking questions. I was hoping he'd let it go, but apparently I underestimated his stubbornness." He poured himself vodka, didn't drink it. "What are you going to do?" "Meet with him. Try to make him stop." "And if he won't?" The unspoken threat hung in the air. If Dante pushed this, if he violated the treaty's implicit terms, Nikolai would have no choice but to respond. "He will," I said, hoping I was right. "He has to." Nikolai studied me. "You still love him?" "Yes." "And me?" The question caught me off guard. We'd been dancing around this for weeks, the growing connection between us, but neither of us had named it. "I don't know what I feel for you," I admitted, "but it's real, and it's complicated, and it scares me." He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. "Go to your meeting. Save him if you can. But Zara, if he forces my hand, if he makes this a public challenge to the treaty, I will do what I have to do, even if it destroys you. Do you understand?" "I understand." The next day, I went to the address Margot had given me. It was a small cafe in a neighborhood I didn't know. Dante was already there, looking like hell, thin, exhausted, angry. When he saw me, his expression was pure anguish. "Tell me it's not true," he said before I even sat down. "Tell me you didn't marry that monster to save my life." I sat down across from him. "I can't tell you that, because it is true." "Why?" His voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me have a say?" "Because you would have done something stupid and gotten yourself killed." I kept my voice steady, even though I was breaking inside. "Your father ordered your execution, Dante. The only way to stop it was the treaty. And the only way to invoke the treaty protection was to become part of Nikolai's family." "So you sold yourself to him?" "I saved you." "I didn't ask you to." He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. "I didn't ask you to throw your life away for me. I would have found another way. You would have died." I leaned forward. "There was no other way. Your aunt tried everything. This was it. And I made the choice because I loved you enough to let you go." Tears streamed down his face. "I don't want to be saved if it means you're trapped with him." "Too bad, because you are saved, and I am trapped, and there's nothing either of us can do about it." I grabbed his hand across the table. "Dante, please. You have to let this go. If you confront Nikolai, if you make this public, the treaty breaks. And then you're back on the list, and everything I did was for nothing." "So I'm just supposed to accept this? Accept that the woman I love is married to my family's enemy?" "Yes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do." I squeezed his hand. "Live, Dante. Be free. Make the life you always wanted. And let me go." "I can't." His voice was a whisper. "I can't let you go." Here's what I should have said. "You have to." Here's what I should have done. Walked away. But I was 7 months tired, 7 months heartbroken, 7 months of loving 2 men and belonging to neither of them. So instead, I said, "Then we're both going to suffer. Because this doesn't end with us together. It ends with you alive and me doing what I have to do to keep you that way." A thought struck me that I hadn't considered before. Would you sacrifice your happiness to save someone you love? Or is there a limit to what love should cost? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one who's struggled with impossible choices. We sat there in silence, holding hands across the table, mourning what we'd lost. Finally, Dante pulled away. "Does he treat you well?" he asked. "Nikolai?" I thought about the past 7 months, the distance that had slowly become closeness, the cold husband who'd somehow become a companion, the man who brought me books and protected me and looked at me like I mattered. "Yes," I said honestly. "He treats me well." Dante closed his eyes like the words physically hurt. "Do you love him?" "I don't know. Maybe. In a different way than I loved you." Past tense? I met his eyes. "I'll always love you, Dante. But the version of us that could have been? That died the day I married Nikolai. And I need you to let it stay dead. For both our sakes." He stood up, and I knew this was goodbye. Really, truly goodbye. "I hope he deserves you," Dante said. "Because you deserved better than this." Then he walked out of the cafe, out of my life, and I let him go. I sat there for an hour after he left, crying into terrible coffee, mourning the end of something that never got to fully begin. When I finally went home, Nikolai was waiting. "How did it go?" he asked. "It's over. He'll let it go." Relief flickered in his expression. "Good." We stood there in the foyer, the space between us charged with everything we weren't saying. "Nikolai, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did you agree to this? The marriage?" You could have chosen anyone. Why me? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because Margot showed me your file, told me what you were willing to do for Dante. And I thought anyone capable of that kind of love, that kind of sacrifice, was someone worth having in my life. He stepped closer. I thought I was getting a transaction. But you're not a transaction, Zara. You never were. What am I then? You're my wife. He said it simply, but there was weight behind the words. And somewhere along the way, that stopped being just a title and became something real. My heart was racing. Nikolai, you don't have to say anything. I know you still love him. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe there's room for something else. Something between us. He left me there, and I stood in the foyer for a long time, trying to figure out what I wanted. Trying to figure out if it was possible to love two men and build a life with the one you married to save the other. 8 months into my marriage, everything came full circle. I'd settled into a strange sort of contentment. Dante had kept his word. No more confrontations, no more attempts to rescue me. He'd sent one text. Be happy. You deserve it. Then silence. And Nikolai? Nikolai had become my partner in every way that mattered, except physically. We still maintained separate rooms, still had that unspoken boundary. But we were closer than many married couples I'd known. We talked for hours. We laughed together. We built something real out of the ruins of how this started. I was almost happy. Then came the night that changed everything. We were having dinner, just the two of us, as usual, when Nikolai's phone rang. He answered it, listened, and his face went pale. When? He stood abruptly. How many? A pause. I'm coming. He hung up and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear. There's been an attack. On the Moreau family compound. Dante's there. My blood turned to ice. What? Someone hit their headquarters. Multiple casualties. It's bad, Zara. Really bad. I was moving before I could think, grabbing my coat. Take me there. Absolutely not. It's a war zone. Take me there or I'll find my own way. I met his eyes. Please, Nikolai. He could be dying. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd lock me in the mansion to keep me safe. But instead, he grabbed his keys. Stay close to me. Don't leave my side. Understand? We drove through the city at dangerous speeds. Nikolai making calls in Russian, coordinating something. When we pulled up to the Moreau compound, it was chaos. Police, ambulances, people screaming. Nikolai flashed something at the police line, some credential I didn't see, and they let us through. The main house was destroyed. Windows blown out, walls collapsed, fire damage everywhere. Bodies were being brought out on stretchers. Dante Moreau, Nikolai barked at one of the paramedics. Where is he? He's alive, in the East Wing, trapped under debris. We're trying to get to him now, but it's unstable. I ran. Behind me, I heard Nikolai shout my name, but I didn't stop. I ran through the ruined house, following the voices of rescue workers, until I found them. They'd cleared most of the debris, and there he was. Dante. Alive, but pinned under a collapsed beam, blood on his face, barely conscious. Dante! I dropped to my knees beside him. His eyes focused on me, confused. Zara? What? How? Don't talk. Save your strength. I looked at the rescue workers.
Can you get him out? We're trying, but it's delicate. One wrong move and the whole section comes down. I looked at the situation with my nursing training kicking in. The beam was across his chest, but hadn't crushed him. There was enough space that he could breathe. But his leg was at a wrong angle. Broken, definitely. And he was bleeding from somewhere I couldn't see. I need medical supplies, I told the nearest worker. Now! They brought me a kit, and I went to work, stabilizing what I could while they worked on the beam. Nikolai appeared beside me, somehow, his presence solid and grounding. Tell me what you need, he said.
Help me keep pressure here. I guided his hands to a wound on Dante's side. Don't let up. We worked together, the three of us connected in this surreal moment. Me, the man I'd loved, and the man I'd married to save him. All of us fighting to keep Dante alive. It took 20 minutes to free him. 20 minutes of terror and precision and praying to gods I wasn't sure I believed in. When they finally lifted the beam and got Dante on a stretcher, he grabbed my hand. You came, he whispered. Of course I came. Zara, I need to tell you something. In case I don't. You're going to be fine. Listen. His grip tightened. I was wrong. About everything. You didn't betray me. You saved me. And I'm sorry I made you feel like that wasn't enough. Tears burned my eyes. Dante. Be happy. With him. With Nikolai. You deserve to be happy. He looked past me to where Nikolai stood. Take care of her. She's the best thing in the world. Then they were loading him into an ambulance, and he was gone. Nikolai drove me to the hospital. We sat in the waiting room for hours while Dante was in surgery. Margot appeared at some point, hugged me, thanked me for coming. He's going to make it, the surgeon finally told us. Broken leg, punctured lung, significant blood loss, but he'll recover. I sagged with relief. Nikolai's arm came around me, holding me up. Let's go home, he said quietly. In the car, neither of us spoke. But when we got back to the mansion, instead of going to our separate wings, we both stood in the foyer, neither wanting to be alone. Thank you, I said finally, for taking me there, for helping save him. You would have gone anyway. At least this way I could keep you safe. He studied me. You still love him. I'll always love him. But you were right before. There's room for something else. I stepped closer to him. Nikolai, I don't want separate rooms anymore. I don't want this distance between us. I want to try to build something real. If you still want that. His eyes searched mine. You're sure? I'm sure. He closed the distance between us, cupped my face in his hands the way he had the night of the attack, and kissed me. It was different from the cold, performative kiss at our wedding. This was real. This was chosen. This was us, finally letting down the walls we'd built. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you, he said. I've loved you for months. I just didn't think I had the right to say it. You have the right. I smiled through tears. Because somehow, impossibly, I love you too. That night, I moved my things to his wing of the house. And for the first time since this all started, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 1 year after the wedding that changed everything, I stood in a hospital room watching Dante laugh with the physical therapist. He'd recovered fully from his injuries, left his family's business, just like he'd always planned, opened a restaurant, his real passion, it turned out. He looked happy, free. Zara! He brightened when he saw me. I didn't know you were coming today. I was visiting a patient on the next floor. Thought I'd stop by. I'd gone back to nursing 6 months ago, with Nikolai's full support. Worked in the trauma unit of the same hospital where I'd first met Dante. Full circle. How's married life? He asked. And there was no bitterness in it anymore, just genuine curiosity. Good. Really good, actually. I showed him my phone. A photo of me and Nikolai from last weekend, hiking in the mountains. He was smiling in it. A real smile. I'd made it my mission to see that smile as often as possible. You look happy, Dante said. Both of you. We are. And you? How's the restaurant? Busy. Stressful. Amazing. He grinned. Actually, I'm seeing someone. A food critic who came to review us and stayed for dessert. Literally and figuratively. I laughed. That's wonderful. We talked for a few more minutes, easy and comfortable. When I left, he hugged me. Thank you, he said, for everything. For saving my life. For letting me go. For showing me what real love looks like, even when it doesn't look the way you expect. Right back at you. I walked out of the hospital into autumn sunshine. Nikolai was waiting by the car. He'd driven me to work this morning, planned to take me to lunch. How is he? Nikolai asked as I slid into the passenger seat. Good. Happy. He's seeing someone. Good. He took my hand, laced our fingers together. He deserves happiness. We all do. We drove through the city, and I thought about the journey that brought me here. The impossible choice I'd made. The marriage that started as a transaction and became real. The two men I'd loved in completely different ways. I'd set out to save Dante's life by marrying his enemy. I'd ended up saving myself by building something true with the man I'd married. And somehow, impossibly, everyone had gotten their happy ending. Not the one we'd expected, not the one we'd planned for, but the one we needed. What are you thinking about? Nikolai asked, glancing over at me. About how strange life is. How the worst decision you ever make can become the best thing that ever happened to you. Marrying me was the worst decision? He said it with a smile, teasing. At the time?
Absolutely. I squeezed his hand. Now, it's the decision that gave me everything. That night, in our shared room, truly shared now, in every way, Nikolai pulled me close. I never thought I'd have this, he murmured. A real marriage. Someone who knows who I am, what I've done, and stays anyway. I never thought I'd survive losing the first man I loved enough to find the second. I kissed him. But I'm glad I did. We'd been forged in impossible circumstances, built on sacrifice and survival. But what we had now was real. And it was ours. My name is Zara Volkov, and I married the Mafia boss's rival to save his life. But along the way, I saved my own. And that, it turns out, was the whole point.